So I did a thing on Sunday night. I went to see Jimmy Dore. My wife said, "You talking instead of just standing there posing for the picture." I'll tell you about that conversation.
Let's get ready to rumble! You can't handle the truth. Somebody on the top of the line!
Hi, this is Pastor Marty, armed with a cup of coffee, and this is the Afternoon Drive, our Labor Day holiday edition. So glad to have you along. Make sure you're a subscriber to the channel. Once you are, smack the bell, click the word all, so that you get notifications of all of my rants, my ravings, and of course, my beyond question, flawless reasonings. Hey, and once you are subscribed, and after you get through liking this video, please give us a thumbs up and share this video to your platforms. Help us get our algorithm up. Help us get the word out that we're here. Welcome to the Afternoon Drive. So I went to see Jimmy Dore on Sunday night. He was in the Toledo area, and I know what some of you are thinking. Pastor Marty, you've talked about Jimmy Dore before, but you know, Jimmy Dore is like a leftist, and you're like to the right. In fact, I've had some people tell me, Pastor Marty, you are like more to the right than the most guy on the right. I get it, but I absolutely love Jimmy Dore, love his show. I never miss it. And I got to tell you about my slow conversion to Jimmy Dore. My first experience with Jimmy Dore was not his stand-up comedy. My first exposure to him was through the Young Jerks, you know, Chunk Yogurt and Anna Sparian. And he would sometimes be on their panel. And there were things that he said that were snarky and funny, but you know, he just, you know, he had that real leftist point of view, and this was of course all pre-Trump stuff, and so I really didn't care for his ideology. Then we get into the 2016 election cycle, and you know, everybody over there at the Young Turks was, you know, all in for Hillary Rotham Clinton, you know, that even though for months leading up to the presidential election between Donald Trump and Hillary Rodham Clinton, you know, they all, you know, were supposedly in Bernie's camp. These are progressives, and, you know, Hillary Rodham Clinton is part of the establishment, yada, yada, yada. But once she rigged the election and cheated Bernie out of it, funny how Democrats can understand that elections can be rigged on the primary level. You can keep out the candidates you don't want. But of course, that never happens on the general election level. That just can't happen there. Unless it's Donald Trump that wins, and then Hillary Clinton for 6 years continues to say it was a stolen election, the Russians interfered, yada, yada, yada. Is she indicted? No. Donald Trump, you know, he's got to get the electric chair for daring to insinuate that Joe Biden, you know, got 81 million votes by basically campaigning from the basement of his house, not even being able to read a teleprompter, and, you know, insulting virtually every group that he needed to vote for him. You ain't black if you don't vote for me. Yeah, okay, we're supposed to believe that guy won. Got it. Understand? Now that we're all signed off on the official talking points and the propaganda, let me move on with my assessment and my conversion to Jimmy Dore. I remember during the 2016 election cycle, things were getting hot and heated. And of course, you know, Alex Jones was all in for Donald Trump. And his compadre at that time was Roger Stone. I've interviewed Roger Stone. There are things about Roger Stone I like. There are things about Roger Stone that, to be quite honest, you know, I don't dig. But I've interviewed Roger Stone when I was on the radio in Orlando. And, you know, so Roger and Alex hanging out, and, Alex felt like he had this inside track with Donald Trump, and, he was able to share, insider baseball. And at the convention, Alex and Chunk Yogurt have this matchup. And, of course, in, full disclosure, I mean, Alex walks onto their set and starts crap. He just did. And, at first, Cenk is trying to, blow it off and, get off my set, man. I'm in the middle of doing something here. And, of course, then Anna Kutsparian, starts, her vitriol, and it's game on. And, Chunk gets up, and he's going to be, I'd take him. Just like, when Chunk said he could take Joe Rogan. I'd love to see that. I would pay money on pay-per-view to watch Joe Rogan smack Chunk Yogurt around. That, to me, would be hilarious. But, that all said, Jimmy Dore shows up, and I think if I got this right, he had taken a swig of water, and then he spit the water on Alex Jones. And I remember at the time going, wait, did I just, what? Did that, what? And, I was like, ah. Looking back on it, it's like, Alex, you crashed their set. You were being purposely antagonistic. I know a mild-mannered guy like you doesn't do that, but you were, and as a result, Jimmy acted in kind. So, be that as it may. I began to detect as I started seeing videos pop up of the Jimmy Dore show months after that, okay, Jimmy has left the Young Turks and he's kind of doing his own thing. And every once in a while I'd pop on, I'd watch one of his videos. And I would laugh, and there were points of view that he had that I was like, no. And there were points of view that I went, yes. As you know, I am a hardcore conservative, but I have been very pro, we can do national health care. If we can fund endless wars around the planet, we can figure out a way to give every American and every American family and every child in this country proper health care so that families can stop going bankrupt if they get sick. So families can stop losing their homes, so families can actually make it. And then, of course, when you really start breaking it down, it doesn't matter whether they're Democrats or Republicans, they don't want you to make it. If they're part of the establishment, they're going to make it, you are going to be subservient. That's the reason we don't have something like national health care. You are the worker bees, they are the queen bees, you are here to serve them. The whole we the people has really become an illusion. And the real reason they hate Donald Trump, the real reason they can't stand him is not even over the fact that he was trying to end endless wars and his own generals were disobeying his orders. The real reason they hate Donald Trump is not because occasionally, he let the cat out of the bag about, we're in Syria to get the oil. The real reason they hated Donald Trump was he is not part of the inner circle. He is not part of the establishment. He is not part of the oligarch. And you, the people, we, us, elected the guy we were told not to vote for. That's the problem. The election of Donald Trump was that it was an election, not the usual predetermined, prescribed selection. That's why they hate Donald Trump. And they are sending these clear messages by trying to indict him. You, me, us, don't you ever again think that you, the people, get a say. Don't you ever again think you, the people, have the power. Which is why it's more important now more than ever to make sure that no matter what happens, you cast that vote for Trump, because that is the ultimate to the establishment, period. That all said, Jimmy Dore. And I began to see that Jimmy Dore was the first one after the election of Donald Trump to push back on the Russia narrative. And I'm like, wait a minute. Jimmy Dore doesn't like Donald Trump. Jimmy Dore is not for Donald Trump. But conservatives and so-called conservative media were doing nothing to defend Donald Trump. Rush Limbaugh was, but that was to be expected. But you really weren't getting a lot of pushback, even on places like Faux Pas News, formerly known as Fox News. Hannity, but he's just a paid shill, and he liked the fact that he had access to Donald Trump. But certainly Neil Cavuto, and even at the time Tucker Carlson, those guys, they were not going out of their way to try to defend Donald Trump against the Russia hoax. And some people forget when they talk about, Donald Trump really didn't get all the things done that he said he was going to do. He wasn't just fighting the Democrats when he got in office. He was fighting his own party. The Paul Ryans of the party, the Mitch McConnells of the party, didn't want Donald Trump there. He was the party crasher. And this would have been the same way the Democrats would have done Bernie had Bernie gotten elected. The Democrats would not have worked with President Sanders. They wouldn't have. They would have figured out some type of scandal. They would have created something that they would have circled the wagons against him, and they would have tried to sell to the American people, even though he's from our party, we can't stand with him because of this, because he's not part of the clique. He wasn't in. He is now, which is why he's out shilling for Biden. And I don't know what they got on him. Kind of like when Jeff Sessions, real quick went all in as the Attorney General and said, I've got to recuse myself from the Mueller investigation, and it's just going to have to carry out because I have to recuse myself. I don't know what they had on Sessions. Probably the same thing they got on Bernie. I don't know if they got like CIA videotape of him having, doing, really nasty sexual things to barnyard animals. Don't know what it is, but they got something on him. Bernie's case, I think it's more like they got something on his wife, who was, a college chancellor, administrator. All I know is he came out of 2 elections and became a millionaire, which is why he only now attacks billionaires, because Bernie himself now is a millionaire. Despite the fact of having, honeymooned in the Soviet Union and coming back and telling us what beautiful artwork hung on the walls and subway stations, now Bernie himself is a millionaire with multiple homes, including one on a lakefront property. Real champion of the people. Donald Trump is what he is, and he was loved by the establishment until he ran for the presidency. I mean, both sides of the aisle came to him with hands out. He went to the Clinton weddings. I mean, then he becomes president. How dare he? We didn't give that permission, which is why they hate him. And Jimmy began to see this about the whole Russia thing. And he began to break it down, and he got guys on there like Aaron Mate, who were really digging into the story. Guys like Glenn Greenwald, who, never in a million years would you have thought that conservative media would have began to have somebody like Glenn Greenwald as contributors and participants in their programs. But the more some of these guys on the left, the progressives, like the Jimmy Dores, the Aaron Mates, the Glenn Greenwalds, the more they began to tell the truth, the more they began to be pushed out by their own peers. And then, of course, it became I call it the chunk yogurt wars. And I'm not going to get into all that. Jimmy has well defended himself on that front. Little wimpy pimps like, Kyle Kalinske taking his cheap shot. What is with the Eminem hairstyle you got going? Honestly, you look like you're 14. And, I feel bad for Crystal, who's trying to launch her own business. Come on, guys. I'm really busy, guys. She's trying to launch her own business, and now she's got multiple kids to take care of, including you, because she's got to pick you up from daycare so that you can come do my podcast. Pastor Marty, you're kind of all over the place today. I know, but it's fun. It's a holiday. I'm unscripted today, so we're just going to go for it. I just had such a great time at Jimmy Dore last night, and I'm getting to it. I promise, I am. But Jimmy Dore was pushing back on it, and then I began to listen to some other guys, Aaron Mate, Glenn Greenwald, even a little bit. Before Sager sold his soul to Crystal Balls to launch Breaking Points when they were still over at the Hill, I was beginning to hear voices on the left start pushing back on Russia. Now, we knew that Rachel Mad Cow was all in on it, and the narrative and the propaganda, and that was when I began to realize, there are some things that we on the left, or we on the right and the left, are actually united on. And this really came to a head during the scamdemic. Now, I was, from the beginning, wasn't going to do any of it. One of the pictures of me that kind of went viral online is me with my mask with the hole cut out, and that is a Corona cigar sticking out. When he first came out at the beginning of the virus, and he knew where it came from, and he said, there's no need to mask. It may make you feel safe, but it's really not doing anything. In that infamous 60 Minutes interview of March of 2020. He was telling the truth there. The reason he was telling the truth is lost on most people. He knew where this came from. He knew that he was in this deep kimchi up to his eyeballs. And he was panicked that if he created panic, that people would demand to know where it came from, and there would be, shall we say, legal problems for him, like jail. And then once he realized, once the people were afraid, they didn't care where it came from just as long as somebody could make it go away, and he got the savior complex. I've told you before about Anthony Fauci. This was a guy that all through school was a nerd. He was the science nerd. This was the geek that ran the movie projector in the classroom. This was the geek that when the teacher would leave the room, now Tony, I'm going down to the faculty lounge to have a cigarette. If anybody talks or gets out of their seat while I'm gone, you write their name down and you tell on them. Yes, Mrs. McGillicuddy. I mean, that was Tony Fauci. A geek and a nerd. Oh no, they got pictures of him playing basketball in high school. He went to a boys', I think, Catholic high school where the tallest guy there was like 5'8". So, you know, Tony Fauci, he looks like he's a reject from The Wizard of Oz, Munchkin Land. Get some perspective here. He's a nerd. But all of a sudden, this nerd, who, by the way, killed all kinds of people during AIDS, if you don't believe me, watch the movie, The Dallas Buyers Club. All of a sudden, this nerd becomes a rock star. Governors are listening to him. Everybody's listening to him. And the mask became the way to inflict fear. And if people were afraid, they didn't care where it came from, just make me safe, make it go away. That became how Anthony Fauci got power. I told you, he's like the evil mad scientist in every B-horror movie you've ever seen. Think Whit Bissell. Some of you can do a little Google search on that. King of the 1950s cheesy science fiction movies that were turned out by studios like American International. And Whit Bissell was like the mad scientist. He's Dr. Cocteau from Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes send up The Demolition Man. I will create the perfect society. My society.
I hadn't counted on this, but I must say you worked out beautifully. People are terrified of you.
I'll have carte blanche to create the perfect society. My society.
And Jimmy Dore was one of the same voices out there saying, whoa, wait, stop! He stood up for ivermectin. He stood up for Joe Rogan. He stood up, and I push people, gotta listen to Jimmy. And as we really got into the scamdemic, it really became apparent when they were censoring, removing people from platforms. After Obama Biden got installed as the president, and they were willing to work with the alphabet communities, the CIA, FBI, and all of the online platforms, all in bed together, YouTube, Facebook, Google, etc., and they would crush any dissenting voice. We were talking about it. Jimmy Dore was talking about it. And I began to say, we on the right have some things in common with those on the left. And on those things, we need to get together and unite. You know, what we would call classic liberalism. Free speech. Freedom of assembly. Freedom of expression. So seeing Jimmy Dore was great last night. He was on his game.
How dare you!
As he dealt with his themes, I have been wanting for 2 years. I wanted to have him as a guest here, but I know I don't have a big enough audience to draw that. So I knew I had bought a VIP ticket, so I knew I was going to get, the courtesy photo op at the end. And I thought, I'm going to have about 30 seconds with this guy to ask one question. And I have wanted to interview Jimmy on my show and ask him this one question because, again, I'm one of those conservatives. I believe we can have national health care. Or I should say I believed it. You know my position on that. That I believe that with the pandemic, they would have tied it to the vaccine. That if we had gotten used to having national health care where you had your wife covered, your husband covered, your kids were all covered, you had the family plan, it was all taken care of, and then along comes a pandemic, and if you do not get the vaccine, we will take away your health care. You know, your child won't get his insulin because you won't get jabbed. Your wife's going to have a baby? Yeah, you're going to pay for that out of pocket because you won't get jabbed. So when I got in line to meet with Jimmy, and Steph is great. She's like, you could tell she was a school teacher. I was a school administrator for 20 plus years. I would have loved to have had Steph as one of my faculty members because, I mean, she got everybody in line, and I mean, she ran that thing like an assembly line. Steph was all over. It was great. Loved it. So I get up there, you know, we shake hands. He said, hi, I'm Jimmy. I said, I'm Marty. And I put my arm around, I said, Jimmy, I'm one of those right-wingers that loves you but supports national health care. And, of course, right away his eyes up. He goes, really? I go, yeah. And I said, I got this question I've been dying to ask you for 2 years. Do you think if we had had national health care during the pandemic, I think what he thought I was going to ask would have affected the rate of COVID and would we have been able to deal with it faster, et cetera. But that's not what I asked him. What I asked him was, do you think if we had refused the jab, they would have taken our health care away? And his head literally kind of like popped back. He said, I'm going to have to think about that. I'm going to have to think about that. I would love to have this conversation with Jimmy on the show because I absolutely do think they will do this. They test marketed this in India. See, in India, the poor people get their food from the government. They get an allotment of rice. And the funny thing is, they don't have food there, but everybody has a cell phone, probably government issued, and their life is on the phone. That's their digital passport, literally. So you had to be vaxxed and boosted to keep your credentials on your cell phone current, because they would scan that to give you your allotment of food. And if you were not current, you did not get your food. And I saw where things were heading here. You know, the Vax passport to get into a restaurant, to get into a ball game. And I said, they're going to digitize this, and they're going to tell us that if you aren't vaxxed and boosted, they're going to cut you off from your bank. That's why they want to do away with cash. So they're going to cut you off from your money. They're going to cut you off from your driver's license, your passport, everything about you. This is a way to control. And when they figure out that they can also do this with the National Health Care Program, shazam, bam, baby, we will have national health care overnight. And they'll give you just enough time to get settled into it, used to it, dependent on it, loving it. And then they're going to yank it back and say, you only get to keep it if you do fill in the blank. As Artie Johnson would say, very interesting. And what I love the fact is that a guy like Jimmy Dore, though he is progressive left, so there are a couple of issues that he and I would disagree on, but I can tell you, the longer I've watched him, I'm there on what's going on with our military-industrial complex. Got it. See it crystal clear. So, Jimmy, thank you. Thank you for a great night. Thank you for your pushback. Thank you for standing up. I know it's cost you friends. I know it's cost you peers. I am sure that it has cost you gigs and things that you could have had. Thank you for doing the right thing. And not sure of all of your spiritual beliefs, but I could tell you, brother, praying for you. Love meeting you, love meeting your wife, and from one righty to a lefty, on these issues, we are totally united, and all I can say is keep up the fight.